Well, so the first speaker who you will have the chance to ask these questions in his talk, Mitigating the Risk of an Insider Threat, he will explore the human aspect of everything, the human behavior, the emotion, the decision-makings that shape the hidden vulnerabilities inside every organization. Our first speaker, who I hope you will welcome on the stage with a warm applause, is the world-leading expert in cognitive emotional intelligence, helping governments and companies worldwide to understand the psychology, risk, trust, and failure behind every move. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on the stage, kicking off day 2, the CEO of CERT.LV, Mr. Gerry Donaldson. Good morning.
Good morning. The thing that seems to be a theme within this talk is the people. We saw it yesterday with the examples that were given about the mistakes. The mistakes are coming from people. They're not coming from the systems. And I'm going to explore that and just show some of that for you today. My name is Gerry Donaldson from Scotland. I was asked to speak English today, which is tough for a Scotsman, but I will try. But it's been very hospitable, first and foremost, to be here in Riga. I've been really enchanted by this beautiful city and its people, so thank you for welcoming me the way that you have. I want to start with a story. I was in Zurich last month, and I was sitting at the breakfast table, and just happened to be sitting with 2 senior pilots, and these 2 senior pilots were sitting having a conversation. One of the pilots looked as if he was around 35, 38. The other pilot, maybe 50, 55. The younger pilot, he slouched back. All of his ego, all of his charisma is showing and on show. And the older guy, 50, 55, younger than me, but the older guy, he's poised, he's sitting up, he's much more mature in this conversation. And as the younger guy is explaining his situation, he's on a flight with one of the new planes, and he's talking about the senior pilot, the senior test pilot, who's got over 30 years with this airline, and he's on the approach to O'Hare. And he turns around and he says, the junior pilot says to the more senior pilot, you just need to flare a bit and take some speed off. To which the senior guy totally ignores him. Now, this is a conversation being given at breakfast. So I'm listening, as you do. And he says, so I then repeat to the senior guy, you need to take some speed off. To which the senior guy gives no response whatsoever. He said, I then had to, for a 3rd time, raise my voice and tell this guy, slow down, this is a busy airport, there's lots of planes down there, and it's full of people. To which the senior guy eventually took the speed off, landed the plane. When he was taxiing, the senior pilot turned around to the junior and he said, thank you for that. So the junior guy again says to this guy he was telling the story to, he says, not once did he turn around and explain why he was doing what he was doing. He was testing the plane for his own reasons. He then goes on to further his rant by talking about a particular airport, particular security doors, doors that are lodged open, which gives full access to the inner workings of the airport and to the pilot quarters. Again, at breakfast in Zurich, in a hotel, and I'm listening to this. So while this guy's telling this story, the older pilot is looking at me and he's thinking, is he listening to me? I'm eating my eggs Benedict and I'm thinking, don't look, don't look, don't look. But I'm listening intently to this brazen array of betrayal of the trust, the brand, the professionalism, the reputation. So I say nothing. I act dumb. I'm good at that. And he continues to talk disparagingly, badly, about the organization. Now, if this is, in theory, for an airline, 2 senior captains, they had the braid, we work with airlines, you know the rank, you know the maturity, you know what the bars mean. These are senior pilots in this organization. Yet they talk openly about not only security, but about the standards and about the safety of this airline. Global airplane, one of the largest in the world. If that's what they do, what does the rest of the organization do? We heard a beautiful example yesterday of the engineer who didn't want to make the travel. So we thought he'll check things remotely. Why? Why do people do these things? Let me just give you a little bit of historical context. We can go back for the last 20 years. What's changed? Nothing. We can look at the examples today from modern companies spending an absolute fortune on the fabulous products and services that are in this building today. You're all doing the right thing when it comes to that. But where's the people bit? The Louvre, my friends who are visiting Paris, they're saying, do you want anything brought back? So, too soon? So this is part of the challenge. And if you've got 20, 30, 40 years, but particularly the last 2 decades, if it's always the people, why does it keep happening? Because if it's the human being, why don't you invest in the human being? Or if you do, what are you investing in? And this is part of the issue. Because if you're only investing 1% of your total budget, but you're losing 90% of your investment, it doesn't matter what business or government or line you are in, that's not good business. Here's a typical risk intelligence model. You'll find them anywhere. That's it. But it's accepted that 95% of the budget is going to be spent on all that stuff. Correct. Should be. But there's almost no consideration whatsoever for the people to the same intensity that you spend on your hardware and your software and your tech, both physical and technological security. So what's the challenge and what's the issue? This here is where most of your threat resides. It's people's attitudes. It's where people think. How do you think? Why do you think? Why does that happen? We all have a friend. Pretty much we all have a friend who at some point we've sat down as they're sitting over coffee scratching their head, and you look at them and you go, what were you thinking? Because they've done something or said something they shouldn't have done or said. And that's the first thing we ask them, what were you thinking? Because if you're rational, if you're integrity-laden, if you're in place, if you're mature, if you're sensible, you don't make these stupid decisions. But people do all the time. Questions why? Well, let me give you a little bit of the data. This is our data. We're in 172 countries. We've got over 60 million data points on people. So we're about as advanced as they get. We've got all the big firms, the big social media firms, and all the rest of it, because we can do what they can't when it comes to understanding people. Some interesting numbers. Despite having billions upon billions upon billions of dollars invested in helping people understand who and what they are, still not working. Now you get 2 trends here. You get the passively engaged and you get the passively disengaged. This makes up about 65% of your workforce, regardless of what firm you are. And these guys, they're the great workers. They turn up. They're ambitious to do a good job, but they're not trying to be the chief exec. But they do a great job. And these guys, They're just looking for a job. They just follow. That's about 65% of your workforce. These guys, they're all you. They're the superstars. They're the guys that want to make a difference. These are the guys that are here to learn, to understand, and think, how can I do something different? That's there. This is roughly 25% of your organization. These guys here, they're trouble. This is the actively disengaged group of people in your organization. At the moment, for most organizations, it's 9%. So if you have 1,000 employees in your organization, you've got 90 people that are trying to mess you up, either deliberately or purely by chance. 90 people. Now that's statistically all of our data from all of our clients all over the world, 9%. If it gets to 13%, shut your doors, because that's real toxicity, and that's when your business tends to go under, or your insider threat becomes a major, major problem for you. This is what's happening with people. These are trends that are happening today. People are changing. We know that. Tolerance. You would tolerate so many different things, going to so many different places, so many different cultures, so many different religions and the likes, and you would tolerate it. You'd go, yeah, no problem. It's not my cup of tea, but it's not my thing. But you tolerate it. But that's changing, because you're increasing stuff that ordinarily you would never accept. Stuff you will accept at home, you would never accept in a workplace, and vice versa. Why? They give you a split personality? No. Everybody's entitled. Everybody thinks they should be the big boss with the big money, get all the stuff. Get a Ferrari. As someone says yesterday, you get a free Ferrari. You know? Everybody's got that. The opinions that people have, the bias that people have, especially in multiple generations in age, when you're trying to make a decision strategically about some strategy or where you're going. The older generation, the middle generation, and the younger generation, they could not agree on the color of grass. Not the grass you smoke, but the grass you walk on. All right? And all of that, too soon, all of that leads to risk thinking. It's all about how you think and make a decision. Part of the insider threat comes from this, because people are a risky business. When we have everything going for us and we feel good and we feel mentally balanced and we feel in charge, everything that we do is positive when our intent is positively intended to make a difference. The Dalai Lama talks about that in the Four Noble Truths. One of them, cessation of pain, because everything's cyclical. So just deal with this, you'll get through it. And somehow hope finds a way, and you do. That's exactly the threat that we've got just now. That's exactly what we're thinking for Ukraine. Hope, and we'll get through. So people are risky. Go back to the pilots. Your trust, your reputation and brand. I will never fly that airline unless it's the only plane that's going there. And because I know their names, because they had a big badge on, I will ask who the pilot is. Are they loyal? Are they capable? Is the capacity there? All of these things all come together for your insider threat. But what's the difference? Where's the catalyst? It comes from this opportunity. If you run a ship that's tight, and the point that was made yesterday, you make Latvia a tough target. If you make it tough, they'll go somewhere else. Now, that just means that they're doing what they do somewhere else, and that's great because they're not targeting you. It's like the school bully. Go beat someone else up. Don't come to me. But the problem's still there. But run your ship really, really tightly. Now, a lot of people are blaming this and saying, oh, COVID-19, COVID-19. But you saw from the earlier slide, on our data globally, people have been getting angrier and disenfranchised for over 20 years. And it's only going to go one way. Because once those bottom two cross, if they cross 2027, 2028, it means you'll have more people in your organization that will be disenfranchised than supporting you. That's a challenge. So, what does all the research say about changing people, about changing attitudes? A little bit of the science behind this is it takes 3 calories to start a negative thought, and 7 to start a positive one. So the reason there's so many miserable people kicking about is because it only takes 3 calories to start that. Now think of you guys sitting in the room. Where's your attitude? Where's the positivity? Where's the strength of character? Where's your discipline? Where's that coming from? Is that a 3 calorie or 7? I would bet the fact that you're here, most of it's 7. So I applaud you. When you're developing people, you have to use a modern approach. When you're looking at neuroplasticity, there's 3 parts to the brain. The pink in the end, prefrontal cortex. This is the funnel for all the information to go in. When you fill this side here, this really comes alive by 12 to 14 years of age, and then by 15 onwards, it starts to develop. So depending on what that person's being taught, chatted to, spoken to, mentored, advised, parenting, all of that develops their ability to function and process emotions. This red bit here's your calculator. That develops forever. You keep adding in sums and you go from a basic calculator to a scientific one. So therefore, as you mature, you make better, more mature decisions. Hence why most judges are older. And then this bit here, the yellow, this is the delivery mechanism. This is what you will see as an observable behavior. So the brain, the mind, the whole process is where all of your performance, all of your challenge, all of your problem solving, all your relationship building, all of that comes from your cognitive EQ. Period. Not your personality, none of that stuff. Because part of the problem, once you chemically think a thing, it builds these neuroplasticity and all your synapses start coming together, but you keep repeating it. When you keep repeating it, you get a big clump. And that big clump suddenly makes you quite good at playing the piano or quite good at problem solving in maths. But then you have to develop it even further to then turn it into something that you use every single day. Make it actionable. So the reason most people never change is because they never get changed at a cognitive state. So when you say we need to change the behaviors in my business and it doesn't change, hello. It's never going to change. Save you money and spend it on a good lunch. You need to change people from a cognitive lens, cognitive perspective. Here's the problem. The 1% that you're spending on your systems right now, most of you are using some form of psychology-based Big 5 model, 16PF model. You're using some form of personality assessment. If they worked, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have a global business. If they worked, but they don't. The simple fact is, when they were designed 70, 80 years ago, they weren't really fit for purpose or accurate then, but there was a wow, because no one knew any better. Now, we know different. They don't work. Because if you're telling me that there's only 16 personality types for the 8 billion people on this planet, not only does it not resonate with me, but it's a bit of an insult. I like to be unique. I like to be different. In Cornell, it's a physics joke, so if you ain't into physics, you ain't going to get it. In Cornell, there's an electron microscope which looks at the infinitesimally small components of our atomic structure that makes our entire universe. And even if you were to use one of these to try and find the problem as to why people betray you, you still wouldn't see it, because it's looking through the wrong end of the telescope. You're never going to see it. Here's the difference. This is who we are as individuals. There's 56 million ways in which you and I think and make a decision. Once we have a thought in our head, it stays there. It's like treading water in the pool. Nothing happens until you give it energy. Once it's energized, you either go yes, no, maybe, nah, or you go, here we go, and you're energized to go do something about it. That turns into what we call an observable behavior, of which you can deliver that in any one of 40,000 ways. So the complexity of people isn't 16 personalities. Get out. So insulting. It's 282 trillion ways in which the human being become the human being. There's so much of the human doing that most of us have forgotten how to be a human being. Hence all the agendas, hence all the bias. And the problem is, the tools that you use to identify the insider threat, they're all looking through the wrong end of the telescope. We've got the version at home, we get the version in the family, we get the version of the guy that turns up to do something innovative or problem solve. It's still you, but there's a different variation in you when you turn up. Why? Does it mean you've got 3 or 4 personalities? No. It means that in certain situations, you know who turns up to deliver, but you also know why. In other modern psychology, if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you say, can we talk about my 30 versions of me? They're going to lock you up because they only think you're a bit weird. You come to us, we'll pull out the table, get the biscuits and say, Labrit, have another sugar. Because it's about really understanding who you are. It fixes the problem. So when it comes to human risk, what do you need to do when it comes to the insider threat? What's the approach you have to take? Like anything else meaningful, it has to have a structure. It has to have a methodology. It's the same as you're saying, okay, if we're following a pulse, I used to do mainframe computing. I used to follow the pulse in my head to follow the pulse where it went. The IBM guys would scratch their head and say, how does he know this? It's because I would build it. I would go and strip it down and build it. Not because I was paid to, but because I wanted to. I was curious to find out where the pulse went, into what supergrouper, into what clock. How does that work? Curiosity. So you have to have a system. This is our system. Are you above the line? Or are you below the line? So there's a whole methodology to look at all of this. You've got the technology and the cyber, which you guys are doing fabulously well. But the human bit bleeds into both of those areas to such an extent that it's not a Band-Aid you need, it's a full life support. You have to change how you view and measure the people. It's critical. You start with what's going on up here, the cognitive EQ. Think of attitude here for a second. All your bias, all your beliefs, all the, yeah, but this is my experience, I know. You form an attitude and an opinion in your head. That's how it is. So what does that look like? Well, there's an example for some of the clients. We simplify all of that technology down to a risk score. Risk and emotional resilience. The risk is either a safe pair of hands or a lying, cheating rat. Now, don't worry if you try this. Nobody will call you that. But that's exactly what you think of these people when they betray you. The ER is the emotional resilience. How emotionally stable are they to deal with pressure, stress, when it hits the fan? You want to know the response because the minute you start applying pressure, things break. So do people. So how emotionally resilient are they? You need a system as to how you put it in place. You just follow it. Now, this is people. We're not talking about cyber. We're not talking about a network here. This is about how you make sure you guarantee your people are robust. You put these things in place, and they're all linked. All the AI-driven stuff that we do at the back end, we write our own AI. We think a lot of AI out there has been used for the wrong purpose. Some of the AI out there is pretty dumb. A lot of it is pretty clever. So how you use it and how you apply it, critical. So when you have best practice in place, These are the normal things you're looking for. It's not an HR, it's not a talent program, but you need to know this to understand how you're going to mitigate your threat. Because your insider threat is the thing that's going to hurt you most. You want it to impact 3 areas of your organization. Your culture is critical. You'll have heard all the stories and messages before that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It really, really does. So how do you galvanize and how do you really build your culture? Super, super important. This is where all your insider threat sits. Not your personality, not any of that. Let me do a psychometric on you. None of it. Ladies and gentlemen, Valdez, thank you very, very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gerry. Thank you for that. Just one quick follow-up question we had on the Menti platform. Do you see any differences when it comes to culture and geographical location when we talk about attempting to address the insider threats?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I studied computing science initially and then astrophysics. So I then started looking at neuroplasticity, and I wanted to understand, okay, what about cultures? So I looked at cultures and I tried to understand what we now call echoes. So certain cultures, different parts of the Arabic nations, different parts of European nations, going all the way back to the way Latvia was formed and all the different cultural barriers, they all give a different signature, a different echo. So you can put two different groups of people, French and German, together, but they'll act very differently. Their culture will become very different. And the answer is why? Well, you have to understand those cultural echoes so that when you're doing all your measurements, and everything we do is applied mathematics, everything you do will then give you where your standard deviations and norms is. So therefore, you adjust your program to meet the needs of the culture. It's not just about the people, the teams, the silo, the environment they're in, but you absolutely have to address the cultural differences from people. So like Scotland and England, we are on the same island, but we're very different. You know, it's just one of those things, but it's cultural differences.
Thank you, Gerry. I almost understood everything you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here's some socks and lollipops from Latvia. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.